it's kind of a hell world with a lot of love between Sailor and Lula.
It was a complete partnership. It was a total team. They were going to be together forever.
David's a channel that's open, that is shaping and sculpting and molding as he goes along.
He was the personification of evil, as he calls himself, the Black Angel, Bobby Peru.
When those close-ups of the matches would come on, it would be like, you know, it was like an atomic bomb was dropping.
Those characters, Sailor and Lula, they were amazing characters, and it's a fairly violent, edgy movie, but I mean, that was what David was known for at the time.
It's a David Lynch film. You're going to see some strange things that are out of the ordinary, and you just have to go for the ride.
This whole world's wild at heart and weird on top.
I got a call from Monty Montgomery, who later went on to play the cowboy in Mulholland Drive. And Monty told me about a book called Wild at Heart that a guy, Barry Gifford, wrote.
What David appreciated in the novel was the fact that even though there was all this violence swirling around the characters of Sailor and Lula, there was this tenderness between them. It was a real love story. It was a Romeo and Juliet story, except they didn't have to die in the end.
Here you are crossing state lines with an A#1 certified murderer.
Manslaughter, honey, not murder. Don't exaggerate.
It was an equals relationship. Sailor treated Lula as an equal, and Lula treated Sailor as an equal. And they had a special kind of relationship that I thought was very modern.
You really are dangerously cute, baby. I gotta admit it.
Within a period of a couple of months from the time that we gave him the book, he delivered a script, and the movie came together pretty quickly.
It was one of my favorite love stories I had ever read because it was full of David Lynch. It was full of David Lynch.
And the world was very crazy. A feeling that things were falling apart, were getting crazier by the day.
He saw Sailor and Lula a bit like Elvis in Marilyn Monroe, these very American icons.
Now, this will be the signal.
Right.
And then one move, and that movie was over.
Elvis became a key to Nick. Nick is more than that, for sure, but that was a key element.
So I'll bring it up, and then...
That's it. Stop. Dead. Quiet. Everybody's gonna, stop dancing.
Okay.
And then the rest is up to you, ma'am.
Right.
Bubblegum was a key element to Lula for some reason. So there's Elvis and Bubblegum going down the road.
We saw the connections between Elvis and the Wizard of Oz and all those things in his story that they could go together and be part of this road trip.
I got a call from David, and David said, I have this role that I want you to do, sort of based on Glenda the Good Witch, and I want to hang you from a crane by piano wire about 60 feet above the ground. And my heart dropped. And of course, I couldn't tell David no.
Somehow, the Wizard of Oz started walking into Wild at Heart.
Toto. Wicked Witch.
Emerald City.
Yellow Brick Road.
Wizard of Oz.
Wizard of Oz, Wild at Heart. It just came in.
Like music, David will throw in the dissonant note. He'll change, and he'll just go in a different direction, just to give the audience some relief.
I can't find it. Where is the damn thing?
Gotta be in here somewhere.
You can't just play the dark notes. You get tired of it.
I just like how the guy approaches movies. He's very rigorous, but at the same time, he has a very light, easy touch, and he's very playful.
Cut it. Okay, that was nice.
And David really was the one who kind of pointed out that it's very necessary. If if you want to be creative, to have fun. And he kept that fun atmosphere on the set.
The only words we ever used in his direction of us were things like cotton candy, Jupiter, lemonade, Marilyn Monroe, Elvis, more Marilyn, more sexy, more dumb.
The film follows three people. It follows Sailor, it follows Lula, and it follows Marietta. It's a road movie. You know, it's Crosby and Lamour and Bob Hope in hell.
Each person caught that something that brought it alive, and they dug deep and made it so real and beautiful. Nicolas Cage sort of had to play Sailor. When you think about it, it's, built for him.
Nicolas was so great. You kind of just embodied that character.
I was really excited about the idea of playing somebody delinquent, somebody potentially dangerous, but could still be the romantic protagonist in a movie.
His love of music, his ability to be such a great singer, all of those things aided in David's obsession with this sailor fascination of Elvis and rock and roll and being the knight in shining armor to Lula.
Peanuts! Hey, baby!
I'd worked with Laura Dern on Blue Velvet, and she's the best actress I've ever worked with. She's got tremendous talent. Tremendous.
He called saying, I think I want to do this thing, and I'm writing it, and you're going to be in it, and I want your mom to play your mom, and it was kind of like that. He just sort of called up and said we were going to do it.
She's a kind person, and the idea of this kind person in that situation, I thought, made her a deeply sympathetic character. Lula is somebody you care about.
Hello. The phone rang, and I answered it, and it was David Lynch. And he said, Diane Ladd, I have an amazing part for you, and I'd be honored if you'd co-star in my film and do this part for me. And that was it.
Everybody I've ever worked with that's worked with David Lynch is always really, really good and really has a good sensibility. And I've noticed, I don't know how much reading he does of actors. I've never did an audition or read for him. It seems like he often talks to people and just sees if there's a sensibility that is something that he can work with.
Parker. Around the time that Wild at Heart came out, there was lots of interviews and journalists doing pieces on actors being method, and really getting into their parts and all of that. And I think there are actors who think you need to do that, and then there are actors who just want to do it for fun. And I think Nick and I fell in the category of wanting to do it for fun. And I think David sort of encouraged it and liked it, that for those 9 weeks, we just were Sailor and Lula.
Cut it. Okay, Lula. At the top of your stretch, I'm going to stretch for the both of us, baby. You take the stretch, you take a thing of it, and you go whack out, you say, so this is big tuna.
Nick Cage brought so much to that character, and when the two of them got together, you just had to feel for them. They were just so in love. I just couldn't take my eyes off them.
It's very intense, their love. And as David portrays in the film, there's a lot of hard lovemaking in that film, too. And when Lula says to him,
You mark me the deepest.
This is significant. I mean, they're very young people, but she's the wise one. She's the strong one. He can't help himself but from making mistakes.
I didn't have much parental guidance.
But he's a good guy, and he really loves Lula.
Sailor boy!
Marietta is a very interesting character. She's dying inside and very unstable, almost the point of insanity.
I asked David, I want her to be this woman that is mixed up, that shows all of us mixed up, sign of the times, and I want her trying so desperately to do it right and to imitate Hollywood or to imitate the TV or to imitate the magazines. So he let me do them all.
She was branching out. She was experimenting, I think, and she did it great.
In the scene where I crawl toward Harry Dean Stanton, the kitty cat scene, that was my Kathleen Turner look. Then there was my Dolly Parton look. If he believes in you, he'll let you try things. For an example, there was a scene where I was supposed to be sitting in bed holding the doll in pajamas. And I said, David, because I could just see it, in my mind's eye. I said, let me stand and let me be drinking a martini. And I want to wear a Carole Lombard white satin dress in this scene. And he screamed, perfect!
You know who that was. And you know that you aren't. And I mean are not gonna see him ever. End of story.
Laura said later to him, David, you didn't know my mama was the perfect David Lynch actress. And I'm not so sure. I said, wait a minute, what's that mean? But it was a thrill.
She's a pistol. You know, there are people that you enjoy working with because they're enjoyable people, because there's a life.
Marietta!
Now you're sort of watching it and can't believe it's your mother. Even though I'm very used to watching her as an actor, she's playing out this nightmare of this secret-keeping manipulator who's trying really to ruin my life, my love. Literally, I was doing a scene where my mother was riding on a broom next to me, and she was the Wicked Witch. So my mom and I would joke all the time with David on the set, like, I'll never need therapy again. I mean, we've just played out all our demons.
Diane Ladd was the perfect Marietta. And how often do you get great actresses who are actually mother and daughter to do this? And it was like they were those characters.
It is interesting, you know, for the first time ever to work with your mother, and there's a lot of fun in the outlandishness of Marietta. It gave room for us to just act out just the craziest stuff.
Girl! What if I told you not to go?
Mama, if you get in the way of me and Sailor's happiness, I'll fucking pull your arms out by the roots.
Laura and I worked differently. And this one day when Nick was locked up in jail, we go to visit her at the jail. She was on one end of the stage preparing her way, and I'm at the opposite end of the stage preparing my way. Starts the scene, comes in. I come in, and we both do our scene, and we're sobbing, and we finish the scene, and David says, cut. And we've been just devastated as the characters. And now we look up to each other, and I look in her eyes, and I know what she used for the scene. And she knows what I used for the scene. It's like we're standing nude, you know, in Central Park. It's embarrassing to have somebody, even your closest ones, discover your innermost vulnerabilities. And we start to laugh. We both are embarrassed, and we start to laugh with embarrassment.
The moment that the camera turned off and see the interaction between Laura and Mom, and then have it transform back to the two actors again, was a wonderful thing.
You know, it's an amazing feeling when you're doing an emotional scene and you're looking in someone's eyes. It's one thing if they're your lover or they're your very good friend, but when it's your mom, you know, that has known you from conception, there's no lying.
Bobby Peru, just like the country.
Bobby Peru is a legendary character.
I think that Willem Dafoe as Bobby Peru could not have been more perfect.
It's always interesting to see what people remember you for, what really sticks in their mind, and Bobby Peru is one of them that comes up over and over again.
I can't say enough good things about his performance and him as a person. Just look what Willem did. He's not struggling with something. He just knows it and just does it.
Where's that pretty little lady of yours today?
The character is a little bit funnier than what it was on the page. It's this kind of odd, quirky blend between funny and dangerous. You've got this guy, and he's so volatile, and you never know whether he's going to make you laugh or shoot you.
The teeth in the wardrobe were everything. I went into a room on the set, and there was a big old costume rack, and I think there were probably 3 pieces of clothing on it. Usually when you go to fitting, there's all this stuff. That was like, that's it. This is the costume. And I put it on, and I liked it. And a similar thing happened with the teeth. In the script, it says very clearly, he has rotten, stumpy teeth. And I remember David said on the phone, as we were doing kind of the niceties of, I'm glad you're going to do this, and he said, well, fella, we got to get your dentist's appointment. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, the teeth, man, the teeth. It's open, and it's, you can't close your mouth with these things, and it's a little trigger that really makes you feel like a different person. Those are dummies.
Tell me.
You took the teeth out and he went away. But when those teeth were in, it was pretty good.
That's really beautiful.
One of the ways to make the movie more interesting was to instill a visual style on the movie.
David uses everything possible to create the mood. So it's not just the light, it's not just the colors, it's the sounds that go with it.
I love sound. Randy Tom did some incredible things.
There's this recurring motif of a match striking. The main sounds are flares, muffled explosions. Some of them have a little of my voice in them. Almost looks like a meteor or something, and it's symbolic of danger and wildness and passion and heat.
There's a fire that's integral to the story. The big close-ups of the match and the lighting the cigarette, connecting Sailor and Lulu on the road to the very first titles.
David is very, very inventive. He's got an amazing imagination. He will continue to come up with things during the process.
For instance, in the love scenes with Sailor and Lulu, we got this special device called a light flex. It was a sort of a magical thing that you put on the front of the camera, and it allows you to add color. And David said, we need the colors of the rainbow to add to these scenes that we're doing with the two of them on the bed. It's all about those details, and they seem subliminal, but they add up. They all create something.
Man, I gotta take a piss, Ben. Can I use your hand?
The famous, fuck me scene with Laura is alternately grotesque and sexual.
We took this odd moment in this, funky old motel room and transformed it from something that was one instant kind of humorous and then threatening and then sort of horrifically threatening, then turns around and backs right off and ends kind of where it began.
It's really kind of creeps you out. And that was a scene that David really created on the day. That scene really wasn't written that way. I mean, it was completely different on the page. And we went in and it was really, we were like, David, what are you doing here?
Say fuck me. And I leave.
No way, get out!
I'll tear your fucking heart out, girl!
There are some scenes that really have to maintain a kind of a beautiful critical balance to work. Really what it is, it relies on timeline. It was critical that they, feel the moments all the way through that timeline. And they did.
He comes up and she's such a sort of sexual being. And then, he grabs her and they get closer and closer and, forces her to say things. And she maybe doesn't want to say it, but she's gotten caught up in kind of the seductive quality of this whole thing.
He's a snake, he gets what he needs. And it's just the power of insistence and the power of him coming to someone and say, hey, honey, come on, we're here, let's go. And walk that kind of grisly comic line.
I credit David with creating that moment because you can write that on the page, but to get the actors to those places where you can do that is not easy.
To David, that's a scene of female empowerment. Now, however else anyone takes it, I don't know. Doing the scene felt violating, scary, confusing. Willem Dafoe was funny and I didn't understand why, because I was playing Lula, so I wasn't sure of any of it. She's just this sort of sexual energy that doesn't know what's right or wrong and hasn't thought through what's dangerous and what's safe. And she doesn't even know her own mother is dangerous.
We shot a lot of takes of the very wide shot of the whole action because David knew that we were never going to cut in until that moment was right. So it was wonderful to be looking through the lens when it happened, because in those big close-ups when their two faces are right next to each other and you see Bobby Prue's ugly teeth, your skin just crawls. I mean, I could feel that looking through the camera.
My guess is he's memorable because he's like a force of nature in the respect that he's like pure expression of his desire. He's without apology. And even in his death, you get the sense that he's kind of like, okay,
Crispin has a very short part on the screen in Wild at Heart, but no one forgets what Crispin does. He does a perfect, flawless job.
And I think there is something memorable about the character. It's definitely one of my favorite characters that I've played.
Crispin, does like to play odd characters, and David gives him all the room in the world to do that. And that cousin was the perfect opportunity.
As I recall the scene with the yardstick and the glove, David said, if I let that glove go, it would be really, really bad. And I understood what he meant by that.
Crispin will take the idea that you give him and just run with it much further away than you could ever have imagined.
I think I only say one thing, which is I'm making my lunch.
I'm making my lunch!
People always comment on that. People also ask me how much I was directed in that scene. I've never been directed as specifically for something. How long it took and what I did with the sandwiches exactly. I think I actually squeezed the sandwiches. And then I remember afterwards, because David Lynch was going out with Isabella Rossellini, and he brought her over to the counter and said, look at what Del did to all of the sandwiches. There are all of these squished sandwiches on the counter.
The comedy comes from the situation. That's real situation comedy. The situation is so bizarre that that's funny.
Other scenes that people ask me about are the cockroaches. That wasn't as specifically directed. That was just kind of made more sense to me because I'm supposed to have these insects in my underwear and I'm supposed to be enjoying that, so.
And he's hilarious. I mean, he's playing a guy who's got cockroaches in his underwear. I mean, and the way he's moving is hilarious. And when he says, I'm making my lunch, is hilarious. And he's a lot of fun to watch.
I remember reading it for the first time, and my heart was just pounding because it was way, way, way out there.
From beginning to end, it was really a beautiful piece of work. But there was a moment in it where, you get to 10 and this crippled woman's moving around, and it's so creepy. It's so creepy.
There was this huge, long monologue in the main scene for me originally, which did not survive a few test audiences.
The moment the gun goes kaboom and the brains go against the wall, there was a bit of the scene that followed, which was the kind of the sexual culmination. And that's what offended people and sent them entirely over the edge.
We had one test screening where we showed that in all its glory, and there were about 400 people in the theater, and about 275 people walked out all at once. And David leaned over to us and goes, well, I think we lost them. It was like, he thought there was a fire in the building. I mean, it was unbelievable.
People are complaining of heart palpitations and extreme physical reactions to what was going on. It was psychological torture, what was going on.
So we realized that there was a problem. It's part of the process. It's just like that didn't work and other things didn't work. So you go to work and you fix those things. That scene is necessary and it feels correct now. It's part of this fabric that is Wild at Heart.
Lots of people over the years have said that I really frightened them, that when they saw me somewhere, they were afraid to come up and talk to me. I feel that not only is it the scariest, the farthest out, the most extreme character I've played, and I've played a few, it's right up there among the farthest out characters anybody's ever played, a character like that, and I'm glad I did.
This thing with her lipstick, it just seemed a logical progression to kind of go to the max.
That was a scene that we had to shoot pretty early on in the schedule. So it must have been very, very difficult for Diane to make that happen for her character.
She's smearing the lipstick and crying in the mirror, and her face is turning red, and I couldn't help but thinking like it was just some sort of fabulous transformation into like a kabuki style of acting.
At the time we made Wild at Heart, there was an extraordinary number of commercials about you wear the right perfume, and they were doing a lot of lipstick commercials. You do the right lipstick, and people will beat a path to your door. We're being inundated with this baloney. and it was ticking me off. So I decided that I would use that as part of her character. And that's where Marietta was at that moment. She had that lipstick in her hand. So there was this thought, should I do this? Should I take the razor blade and do this like this? Or do I just try to get prettier? Do I just keep trying and trying and trying to get prettier? To keep prettier? And that's what it was. That's what this was. This thing was the lipstick. Was, okay, I'll just put the red lipstick all over my face, and then will I be pretty enough for somebody? It's that kind of scream inside her. That was the character that David let me birth.
I had not realized that you could, from the bits and pieces that you're giving of a character, for her to have created the human being that she created. What a talent.
A local judge praised defendant John Roy, but was dismayed to learn that Roy had had sex with the corpse.
What? One of my favorite scenes in the movie, maybe my favorite scene in the movie probably, is us trying to find something on the radio.
For her recent divorce, shot and killed her 3 children, age 7, shot right between a heinous...
And Lula can't believe what she's hearing. You know, that was going on in the world. So it was a good kind of truthful feeling.
I can't take no more of this radio. I never heard so much shit in all my life.
Nick and I both, I think, remembered that feeling of these kids just hearing horror after horror after horror and just wanting to escape.
Sailor Ripley, you get me some music on that radio this instant. I made it.
And I think that is the beauty, the majesty of David's idea of that movie.
And they put on this mad, crazy music. And they're dancing like crazy next to the road, and then the camera pans back and the music changes. And we hear Im Abendrot again by Richard Strauss. I think this was really disarming to the audience, to all of a sudden be confronted with this utterly beautiful piece of music. And it really evokes the real tenderness that they have for one another. This was a stroke of genius.
It was like a divine accident. We were in the middle of Texas, and it was 110 degrees, and the sun was coming down, and we found the place and pulled the car over, and it's one take, one shot, and we just went crazy and danced all, into the night. And I'll never forget shooting that scene, because it was the quintessential moment of the whole shoot for us.
I still have people who say to me all the time that Sailor and Lula really became for them a kind of a symbol of undying love. And that's a great compliment.
I received an Oscar nomination for the film. So I was rewarded tenfold for something that was already one of the greatest pleasures of my life.
Wild at Heart was a wild ride, and I remember my grandmother saw that movie, and I think she must have been about 85 at the time, and she called me and she said, I just saw that new movie you edited, that Wild at Heart thing. And I said, oh, Granny, are you crazy? Why'd you go there? You shouldn't see that movie. She says, are you kidding? Reminded me of when I was a teenager. I thought, go Granny.
It's such an amorphous thing. I don't really know how to describe it. It's David's world.
There was zero thought that this thing could, win the Palme d'Or. There wasn't that thinking. So it was a just unbelievable surprise. And I didn't come down from that for a long time.
To me, there was no better kind of love story, because it was complicated and sweet and sick and troubled and innocent and youthful, and it was all of it. It seemed with great ease that we were those people for that period of time. We were really a family working for a common goal and a good time.